William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. Welcome to the College of Complexes, being held at Barbeck's Restaurant at 8949 Garland Road, Dallas, Texas. Gently embracing the east side of White Rock Lake. When I entered, I was greeted like coming home to Grandma's house, warm and friendly. When visiting the Barbeck's Restaurant, tell them you want your reservations for the next College of Complex class.
Ready?
Yeah, I get that first smile.
Susan smiling away there.
Alrighty. Welcome everybody to the College of Complexes. I'm not sure what meeting number this is, but we started here in February 2009. Tom Berry brought this down from Chicago. Oh, meeting number 233. All right. Started in Chicago in 1951. For the purpose of solving all the world's problems. And you can see that we're still working at it every week. So what we do every week is we put a speaker on with a different subject. The speaker prepares a controversial topic and takes a position for or against the topic. We don't care what the topic is. Pick your topic. If you have a burning desire to speak about something that you think other people should know about, prepare a talk, get up here, and spill your guts to us. Okay? So, if they like, they can take up to an hour to make the presentation. We don't really want you to take the full hour because this is a group that likes to engage. We want to spend the next period, the second part of our presentation is questions and answers from the audience. And then the final part of our presentation is anybody who wants to comment on what the speaker has said, either for or against, can have a crack at the microphone here. Only up to 5 minutes. Now, if the speaker of the night invites you to ask questions during their talk, that's their prerogative. But generally, our motto is we only listen to one fool at a time. Okay? So,
That's not the final thing.
and then at the end of all your comments, the person who's taken their effort and received a complimentary dinner, courtesy of College of Complexes, gets to stand up here again and comment on your comments, so they get the last word. So if that's your gig and you'd enjoy being able to present and get the last word on your subject, then come on down. We need lots of speakers. Tonight, our speaker is Gene Lantz, and he is president of the Texas Alliance for Retired Americans, and he's host of a KNON 89.3 FM radio program called Workers Beat. Okay, Gene, his information is in the flyer that's been passed around, and I'm sure many of you already know Gene from other venues, so I'm not going to read all of this, but his topic tonight is Stop ALEC. And those of you who don't know what ALEC is are going to get an education tonight, because ALEC is the American Legislative Exchange Council. If you want to know where the dirty bills that are going through our state legislatures that try to deny people the right to vote, try to deny people their choice of physicians and medical attention, well, you need to look no farther than ALEC, and they're going to be in town this coming week. So I know some of the younger people in the crowd and the older people, the retired ones, are probably just revved up and ready to go, voice their opinions on that. Anyway, right now is the time that we also ask if anyone has any announcements. So I will give you an example of announcement that I've already passed out. Dallas County East Democrats is having its 4th annual casino night. That's next Saturday, so I'm poaching from this crowd. I know a bunch of us will already be over there. It's at the BFW Post 6796, which is right up Garland Road from here. Tickets are $25 a piece. That's our fundraiser, and that gets you a certain number of chips to work with as you want to play blackjack, craps, roulette, whatever other fun things that we have going on. That'll include like a light basic beverage and light snacks, and then I think we'll have a cash bar as well. So You've got the flyer, you've got the mission of DACED on the back if you are curious about what we do, education, etc. Any other announcements? Shelley has an announcement. Come on up, Shelley.
Get out.
She and George will let her out.
I don't know if I can get out.
I'll make the announcement. You just tell me what you want to say.
Thank you. I'm a member of the Women's Chorus of Dallas, and it's a community chorus for women. And we are going to have open rehearsals August 18th and 25th. We prefer to see if anyone wants to come and join our organization. We sing all different kinds of music. So if you are a woman and you're a singer and you're interested in checking us out, it's August 18th and 25th at Salmon Center for the Arts at 6:30 p.m. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'll just share a bit of information with you tonight. I appreciate Susie coming up and doing the hello remarks. She does a good, complete job of that. She's got it down. As many of you know, Tom and Susan are out of town on vacation, and they pulled some pretty good duty. Most summers they try to go up to Old Home Chicago and rent someone's condo for a month, usually a school teacher who's gone out of the country for summer vacation break. Well, this year they got invited up by some old friends to come over to a little town outside of Detroit, in fact outside of Ann Arbor, and I don't remember the name of the little town, and house sit for 4 weeks. And those folks are off in Iceland for a vacation, get to see some country that most of us will go all the way through life and perhaps only read about in the newspaper, you know. We're not even real likely here in the middle of the country to speak to someone who's lived there or maybe even been there, unless John has hiked it over from the British Isles. You have, all right. That's what everyone says. I've read a National Geographic article about the country and some others, and it's a very fascinating place. They did a somewhat unique job when they, along with most of the other countries in the world, got in a real debt crisis. They just sort of wiped the board clean and started over again. So, and put some bankers in the slammer. You got it. They took some action which most of us have, for whatever political reasons, have not done. So it was sort of admirable to see that done and see it actually work. It took some determination. So I talked with Tom, this is Saturday, I think on Thursday, and they were hopping the train and heading off to Canada and spending maybe 3 days up, and nice cool air, and they'll see some fresh scenery, and they seem to really be enjoying it. We'll be looking forward to seeing them back. Not next weekend, but during the week, the following week, they should be back. I'll just make a brief mention of what our program is next week. Rich Halperin, and I'm never quite sure I pronounce his name correctly. Yeah, Rick Halperin. Professor at SMU. I suppose he's still doing that. I better not say that, but anyway, Rick was our first speaker when we had the first meeting of the College of Complexes, so I guess about whenever that was, 4.5 years ago, 3.5 years ago, down at Circle Grill. And he drew a nice crowd, and it was very interesting to hear. He's come back and spoken to us a couple of times, once or twice maybe on death penalty. And this time he's going to talk about some things having to do with the global status of human rights, which if any of us watch or listen to the news or read it all, we know they're just scattered all over the map. They're people in different countries who are living in a very different mode. We think we have problems here, but they're not nearly as violent as what a lot of people have to live with. And I'm sure Rick will be equipped to give us a good overview of that and what he thinks some of us might be able to do to be of help to some of that. So we'll look forward to that event occurring next week. We hope all of you can come and enjoy that. I know Tom was speaking to a couple of people who wanted to speak in August, but he does not have that put together. So if anybody has a subject they want to address, or they know someone who wants to, I know we'll have probably at least one Saturday open in August for speaking. And we have the, the first Saturday in September, which is the 6th. Tom has that arranged, and we'll go over that next week. So I think that's enough of that trivia to go along with what is important tonight. The big important is to get Mr. Lantz up here, who's been a very good teacher to us in the past. And in fact, I can't wait until he puts another second party act together and comes like he did one or two times ago and had everybody sitting out with glazed eyes when someone was interchanging with him in the audience at the beginning of his presentation, and people you could kind of see were looking like, who is that person who's butting in on Dr. Lance's presentation, you know? And of course they had it all canned and worked out, and it was very entertaining, and it really made the point that they were trying to make. So we enjoyed the creativeness of that. Tonight I think we just get Gene, but this is a program he's going to talk about tonight, guys. We need to know something about and understand it. The press doesn't talk about it much. The government doesn't have much to say about it. It seems to be mostly just operating back in the background, in the shadows, and every time I hear it mentioned, I have to kind of go back and read a little bit and remind myself who it is and what it is and what they're trying to do. So, Gene, you're finished with the meal. Come on up and join us and give us your information and your thoughts, and tell us about what's coming up this coming week. Welcome him to the podium, if you would, please.
These are contact information sheets for the Alliance for Retired Americans, if you're interested in that. It's already been mentioned that my association with the Alliance for Retired Americans. I'm also the editor, and I'm on the executive board for one of the auto workers locals in Grand Prairie. I'm on the executive board of the Central Labor Council, Dallas AFL-CIO, and I'm on the state executive board of the Texas AFL-CIO. That's who I am. I would like to know how much you already know about ALEC. I would like to know if you are already planning to come to the event on Wednesday. Show of hands. So we've already got several lined up to come, right? And people already know, because Susie just told you that it's the American Legislative Exchange Council. And I have a suspicion that there are several people in the room who know more about it than I do. So I may not talk the entire hour. Thanks to those guys back there in the corner, all of us became aware that there's a 1% or a 0.1% that runs things in America. I hope we're all aware of that. The question that we're looking at this week is, how do they run things? We live in America, we're very proud to be a democracy, but I think we're all also aware that our democracy is quite limited. We live under a limited kind of democracy where we don't really get to decide, for example, to fire missiles at somebody, or to invade Iraq, or to lower the interest rates, or to do this or that with the economy, or to carry out some kind of foreign policy event. We have a limited kind of democracy. Somebody else is making the big decisions. And the question is, how do they make them? For them, for the 1%, the problem is how to apply their resources, which is all the money in the world, to the political system. And of course, some things are obvious. They bribe people. They run candidates. Fortunately for them now, they have almost unlimited ability to affect elections through finances by being able to funnel as much money as they want to for whichever candidate they want to. So that was, in that sense, our limited democracy became much more limited. But how do they get their ideas together? The 1%, it's been said that there are really only 60 families. But even 60 families have to be coordinated in some way if they're going to express their will. Well, that's where ALEC comes in, the American Legislative Exchange Council. It's been called a dating service for the corporate money and the politicians who are willing to meet with them. Many of them are Republicans, but there are some Democrats too. And they hold meetings. During those meetings, the experts from ALEC present corporate-sponsored legislation. And they solicit the state legislators from around the country to sign on to this legislation that's already been written by experts. In many cases, that legislation becomes law in several states practically at once, and practically with the same wording. Some of the legislation is right-to-work laws, so-called right-to-work laws. I call them right-to-scab laws. What we call paycheck, what do we call it? Paycheck decertification or paycheck deception. We call it paycheck deception, but they call it, freedom to be free and, and love your brothers or something like that. I mean, they have they aren't fools. They don't call these things what they are. Paycheck deception would remove would tie up the unions with unnecessary bookkeeping, down to the penny bookkeeping about everything that they did in order to financially survive. So those are some of the bills that they passed. The Stand Your Ground bill was the most famous one, and that's the one that set off Bill Moyers and caused Bill Moyers to do this excellent presentation on PBS in which he exposes ALEC. The Stand Your Ground law, of course, said that if a black person wears a hoodie, it's okay to shoot them. And this law wasn't just passed in Florida. It was passed in several states with similar language. So they made themselves really famous with that. And since then, they have not been on the ascendancy. Since then, because of embarrassing publicity, they've diminished somewhat. Some corporations have pulled out. What's the AARP stand for?
American Association of Retired Persons.
Okay, they pulled out after it became obvious, that people were finding out about ALEC. And other groups have pulled out since then. Not to say that ALEC is suddenly poorer or something, or that they don't have a lot of big supporters. They still have Exxon. They still have Pfizer. They still have Big Pharma. Anybody that's interested in legislation, particularly in state legislation, and has a lot of money, can go to ALEC to find the experts to write the legislation and the craven, cowardly, rotten, no good politicians who are willing to carry it for them. They will be meeting on Wednesday in Dallas at their national convention. And as soon as we found out about that, as members of the progressive community here found out about it, we began to publicize it and to try to get turnout for a protest. It isn't just the protest that's important, it's the publicity. The more people that find out about it, even tonight. I mean, I know that many of you are quite sophisticated on this topic, but I think it's safe to assume that there's one or two that don't know a lot about it. So even what we're doing here tonight is making it harder for ALEC to perform the services that it performs for the big corporations. So as I said, we live under limited democracy. The 1% decides the really big things. This is one of the ways that they do it. It's a very formal arrangement. ALEC is a very formal arrangement, and worked great for them as long as it was done in secret. It is worth mentioning that the protests against ALEC, not just ours, but they were in Kansas City last. I think they were in Oklahoma City before that. The demonstrations and protests are not just us radicals on the fringe. It is really noteworthy in American politics that the AFL-CIO and the labor movement in general is now participating in progressive politics. Now, us old-timers remember very well that they used to not. We were talking just a while ago about the civil rights movement and about the Vietnam anti-war movement, in which most of labor was really on the wrong side. And to the extent that they participated at all, they participated on the wrong side. Most of them, not all, but most of them. We're in a new period now in which it is possible to work with labor, and I think everyone should take note of that. Because labor has money. Not compared to what ALEC has, but compared to what you and I have. They have money. They have buildings. They have access to people. So the opportunity to work with labor on something should not be just taken very lightly. It's a very important part of what's going on. Lastly, I think they've got Jim Hightower lined up, don't they? Jim Hightower is fun to listen to, so I'm mentioning that by way of motivation to try to get everybody to come on Wednesday. To participate on Wednesday, here's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to show up at 1530 Inspiration Road at 11 o'clock on Wednesday. Inspiration Road is just a little street, just a little bit above where the Anatole Hotel is. The Anatole Hotel is where ALEC is meeting. But when the experts looked at that sidewalk out there, even though we've been on some fairly decent demonstrations there, they said, well, that's not a big enough venue for us. We want to have something much bigger than that. So they rented a hall. It's called the Community Brewery Building, I think. And it's at 1530 Inspiration Road. And that's where we're supposed to go and park our cars and all that, and then take shuttle buses down to the Anatole, and then go back to the brewery for, to talk about it and listen to the experts and hear Jim Hightower and that sort of thing. I don't want to go any further because I know that some people in the room know a lot more about this than I do, and are much better motivational speakers than I am. So I will proceed to the second part of the program, if that's all right with you. Thank you.
still up. So.
You're still up, we're gonna ask you.
I have to field questions one at a time?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought everybody asked all the questions and then I did rebuttal.
Microphone.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Hey, Doc, thanks for reminding me. He's getting old.
I'm racing him. We're in the foot race.
He's going to bring you a microphone.
Get it on the machine.
Gene, what's the money connection between ALEC and elected officials that introduce their legislation? Does ALEC pay them directly, fund their campaign, help fund their campaigns? I'm just curious where the dollars are.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't prove anything.
Yeah, I understand that.
ALEC itself charges corporations pretty stiffly to be members. That's where they get their money. And then they charge the state legislators almost nothing. I think it's $100 a year. And it is known that the state legislators get a lot of trips out of this and a lot of luxury treatment. But ALEC, this is an interesting aspect about ALEC. It's a 501c3. They claim that they never lobby. They say that what they're doing has nothing to do with lobbying. And the government has looked the other way up until now. So some of the people that are after them, like Stand Up to ALEC and ALEC Exposed, is it Exposed ALEC? I forgot. ALEC Exposed. Well, they're demanding that the government look at this because clearly they are lobbyists. They're lobbyists in the strongest sense of the word. But they've gotten away with not being called lobbyists up until now.
Can you give me examples of significant legislation that they have linked back to ALEC?
Well, I mentioned the Stand Your Ground law, paycheck deception, right to work. The reason that my organization, the Texas Alliance for Retired Americans, particularly doesn't like them is because Big Pharma is in there with legislation to keep drug prices high. Also, attacks on pensions are important. Privatization is the very essence of the corporate agenda, and consequently it's the essence of ALEC's agenda. To turn any kind of activity, any kind of economic activity into a profit center, which we may as well face it, we wouldn't really be digressing if we turned this whole discussion into the privatization of the Dallas Independent School District. Even though we don't know of a direct connection between ALEC and the privatizing group, Sabotage Our Public Schools. We don't know of the connection, but nevertheless, ideologically, the connection is there. They're very, very much in favor of privatizing any kind of economic activity, turning it into a profit center. Does that answer your question well enough? If not, other people may know more specific stuff.
Hi, Gene. You mentioned at the beginning that we live in a a bit of a limited democracy, and maybe that our limited democracy is why things like ALEC exist or entities like ALEC exist. And so, how can we all in the room work towards expanding our democracy and creating a more expansive democracy, so that not only can we defeat ALEC, but make sure it never resurfaces in another way?
Well, why don't you tell me what you think? Because I'll bet this is a loaded question.
That's a good one.
Very good one.
I'd really like to hear your opinion. If I disagree with it, then I'll speak.
Okay. Don't let him have it anymore. Well, knowledge is power. If we empower ourselves, ordinary people like us, and there's a finite amount of power, then we are lessening the power of the 1%, aren't we? And our knowledge is power, and I think that's pretty much the limits of the College of Complexes is to spread knowledge. But there's quite a bit more to change than just knowledge, because it's my opinion that most people already possess quite a bit of knowledge. They pretty well already know. When I say we live under limited democracy, I saw several heads nodding. People know that. People know who's got the other part of the democracy. And to some extent they know what to do about it. However, I think the Americans are afraid. I believe that it isn't information that we lack, but inspiration. If we had courageous young, stand up young people, if we had courageous young people to lead us, I believe that we might establish a much more democratic society. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I know that that's what I'm working toward. So the information part of it is important and it's very good, but we also need inspiration. We need to be less afraid. We need to be less apathetic. Everybody should be like Trish Majors. The world we would change this world in a moment if we all had the courage of Trish Majors. For example, does that go in the direction you wanted? You know, it's a big question, because it's very easy to just say, well, people are dumb or people are not informed or something, you know. I'm of the opinion, having done this for 50 or so years, I'm of the opinion that it's not exactly true that information is what people lack. I think they're afraid. I think the American people are afraid. And I think that characterizes us much more than saying the American people are uninformed.
Thank you, Gene. Now my question is, maybe you can explain for the people that may not know what a 501c3 is and what a 501c4 is. Can you do that?
This is a code, part of the tax code. 501c3 is a provision in the tax code that allows people to set up a corporation that is tax deductible, so that when you make a contribution to them, it's tax deductible. And the ALEC is one. 501c3s are very highly limited as to what they can do. One of the things specifically is that they cannot lobby. So that's why it's very important to examine the tax status of ALEC, which has not been done, which gives you a pretty good idea of what kind of relationship they have with the government. A very cozy relationship. No one said anything to them. They put our county commissioner in chains and accused him of making $1 million, which he could have saved $1 million. I think isn't his salary $130,000 a year? Give me $130,000 a year, and I'll save $1 million in 10 years. So they're accusing him of having ripped off $1 million, and they put him in chains. And ALEC is still a 501c3.
Well, Gene, tell us what a 501c4s? And how does this intertwine with Citizens United decision?
You tell us.
Go on, George.
I wish I had, no. Go ahead, Gene, I'll give the mic to somebody else for now.
Well, 501c4 is also tax exempt, but you can't, if they're tax exempt, they don't pay any taxes, but if you give them money, you still have to pay taxes on your money. It's not, you can't take it off of your taxes and you give the 501c4. And they are allowed to lobby. And they can lobby much more, not as much as a paid lobbyist, as a corporate lobbyist, but they can lobby. And they can, to a certain extent, support candidates, but they don't have a free rein like a big corporation does to just do anything they want to with a candidate. A 501c4. Most unions fit into the 501c4 category. And they do endorse candidates. And they do lobby. But when you make a donation to a union, you can't take it off your taxes.
Thank you, Gene.
Gene, what you mentioned Americans are afraid. Precisely what are they afraid of and why?
I think they're afraid to lose their jobs more than anything else. I'm trying to remember the name of the guy who was the editor of the CIO News. The CIO News was started when the CIO was started, I think in 1938.
What does it stand for?
The Congress of Industrial Organizations. See, the AFL-CIO was joined together, I think, in 1955. But prior to from 38 to 55, we had the CIO stood alone. And this guy was, Lantz was his name. Lantz. Lantz. I met the guy. He was the first editor and the only editor of the CIO News. He worked hand in hand with John L. Lewis. And was very influential in the American labor movement. After the CIO broke up, or when they capitulated to the AFL, Lantz could never hold a job again. A man that was a national editor, a journalist, excellent journalist. He supported himself for the rest of his life as a typographer because he knew how to run a typography machine. And he went from job to job. And he told me this story himself. He died here. He was living just south of Dallas, and not Lancaster, one of those other towns. Duncanville, DeSoto. He was living in DeSoto when I met him. And he never held a job again because everywhere he went, the FBI followed him. And they red-baited him. Whatever job he had, the FBI made sure he didn't keep the job. They didn't put him in jail. There were other communists that were put in jail, but he wasn't put in jail. He just couldn't hold a job for the rest of his life. And we know that there were a few communists put in jail. And of course, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were executed. But thousands, if not tens of thousands, of people lost their jobs. And I think that lesson was not lost on the American working class. So I think people are afraid of losing their jobs. That's one reason why you see so much gray hair and so many bald-headed people out on the picket line nowadays. Because the retirees are just about the only people who are not afraid to lose their jobs. That's why George Nolan is the biggest radical in Dallas County. He's not afraid of losing his job. But I think people are afraid of that kind of reprisal. Just to be specific, they're afraid of being embarrassed. I remember a guy at my job saw me on television. He said he saw me stand on the corner beating on pots and pans. I bet Trish Major probably organized that one. We were down the corner beating on pots and pans. It's true. And he thought that was so humiliating. That somebody from his plant would stand on the corner and beat on pots and pans. It was a shameful thing. And he went around, telling everybody how disgusting that was. Disgusting that I would do that. So I think there's that. I think there's peer pressure. I think there's fear of some future reprisal. Like maybe some young person might say, I'm not afraid of losing my job. However, I may have a career in politics someday, so I have to be pretty, I don't want any marks on my record, as I move up. So I think there's that. But I could be wrong. We could discuss this all night probably. Are people mostly uninformed or are they mostly afraid? Take your pick, because they're both big problems, aren't they? The one about being uninformed, we can do a little bit more about that. If I were a charismatic leader, and a handsome young 22-year-old or something like that, maybe I could provide a little bit more inspiration. But I don't think people are going to say, that broken down guy over there, I'm going to follow him anywhere. But yeah, I think it's inspiration that we need, and I don't think it's that far off either. If I'm not digressing, I don't think it's that far off. I was reading just this weekend that the millennials, that some libertarian organization had done a survey of the millennials because they were trying to show that the millennials were all ready to become libertarians because they're so disaffected. The young people nowadays are kind of against everything. They don't trust anybody. And they're kind of alienated. They've been lied to so much and so many times and by so many different people that they're just sort of against a lot, if not everything. And so the libertarians were saying, well, that makes them good libertarians, doesn't it? Unfortunately, they found out that above all else, what the millennials don't like is capitalism. So, and the millennials agreed. So they wouldn't make very good libertarians because they're arch capitalists, aren't they? So the libertarians, according to the article, were disappointed.
Too bad.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I say I don't really think it's that far off. I think that a charismatic leader or a group of leaders with a plan that made sense to people might really, really go far. And particularly because of an article in an article in Wednesday's paper. I just read it today. The famous economist said that to look out for next year, that the recession that begins next year will be worse than the one that began in 2008. So I look to the millennials to lead a resurgence of democracy in America. And I don't think it's that far off at all. I think it's next year. I'll go so far as to predict it. 2015, we're going to see a vast extension of democracy in America. You heard it first here.
Thanks, Gene.
Next. Up and down. Who else has a question of the speaker?
Gotta be fair.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Dean, this might sound like a South End question, but I remember a thing called a draft at one time. And even though it was kind of bludgeoningly, it did create political stability. It gave you a thought on what should be done in life. I mean, you're ready to put your life down for your country. You didn't worry about your job. We're missing this kind of training, aren't we? I'm not advocating bringing back the draft, but our young people are missing something. Oh, sorry.
Well, you're saying that they need some kind of something from the government to help them get organized or
There's
something?
no direction. There's no. You learn a lot. You have to study a lot. It may be drilled into your head. Eventually, it might sink in.
I joined the military because I couldn't get a job. I think that's still the main reason people join the military. I wasn't worried about my job because I didn't have one. I mean, my car was broke down and I didn't have any prospects of getting one, so I joined the military. The draft, what really brought people together was opposing the draft. We say the war in Vietnam was, you know, high-minded, good-hearted people, but actually an awful lot of us were just against the draft. I had already served, so I didn't care, but a lot of young people did it to overcome the draft. And I thought that brought us together quite a bit. So when the oppression comes down on us, which is happening now, maybe that will bring us, you know, unite us more than we have. I don't recommend that way of doing it, but just as you don't really recommend bringing back the draft. But I think that people respond. I have great hopes for people. I love people. I am one. Some of my best friends are. And I really have great hopes. I don't think that there's enough fear to hold people back. I don't think there's enough ignorance to hold people back. So I look for great things to happen.
Next, who else has a question? Question of the speaker, come on.
I wasn't very specific about ALEC. I know some of you know more about it than I do, so jump in here. If you have your ALEC stories.
We'll do that shortly if nobody else has a question.
Okay.
Well, if George...
No question.
One more?
No.
No more. Okay, well, Gene, why don't you take a seat in the break, and we will give people here an opportunity to come up to the microphones and make some comments. You can either agree with the speaker, you can disagree with the speaker, you can add something to what the speaker has told us that you know something about, which is always helpful. Not that Mr. Lantz was deficient in his presentation, don't take that as an implication. I love when he comes and speaks. But he always gives us some room to ask and to comment. So it's comment time, and George, come and start it off.
Thanks, Gene. It was a good presentation. I do want to mention that most of the things I learned from the Occupy movement. It was when it first started in Dallas, I was very curious. Plus, I was retired. I had the time to say, what is this? What's going on? And I went down there and I met these people. You know, I heard some bad press about them and so forth, and I learned so much. ALEC was one of them. Glass-Steagall was the other. These people gave classes. Now, what really ended the thing, the movement? It's not ended. Many of us are in different places at different times. And we still carry what we learned in that movement. And like I said, I never heard of ALEC until then. And when they said the American Legislative Exchange Council, Well, who does the lobbying firm, Gene, is actually the ILL. ILA, Institute for Legislative Action. These are the ones that lobby for ALEC. Once ALEC gets the idea that they've already planned it before. It's like Gene said, when all of a sudden you see in each state the same basic language in the voter rights restriction and so forth. And the way they put it is, what's wrong with showing your ID? The only trouble is the IDs that they ask for, they know who's not going to have them. And it's basically the elderly, the college kids and so forth. But yet you can show your gun license, and that's accepted. What's happened to our democracy? Well, we are a democratic republic, and we get our representatives and they get elected. The only trouble is once they get elected, they gerrymander their districts. And what we have is that the incumbent, even though he may be rotten, continues on. And we have to change some of this. My son was a geographer up in Collin County. In fact, he's now got another position which also does that, and he was trying to get different things. He's not as aggressive as I am. In fact, he's a pretty nice kid. But one of the things he was doing was for the county commissioners, trying to straighten out the gerrymandering they'd done there. And he'd give them 5 or 6 different ways to do it. So many Democrats, so many Republicans in the area, so many blacks, so many whites, back and forth. And they finally settled on something, but he says some of the districts were completely outrageous, where one guy wanted his brother-in-law to be able to vote for him, so there's a little skinny thing that goes up and does that. So, I do have hope. I have hope for the young people, like Gene says, but we have to get all informed on what's going on. I myself was never informed until I went to retirement. And then I had time. Before I was trying to support a family, get along in life and so forth, and now I can work on my passion, which is trying to straighten out the country I love.
Well, thank you, George. Always. Next up, come on, somebody who has come tonight and knows something about the act, get up and give us some expanded information. Come on and do it, girl.
Okay, I'm Jan. I'll put in my 2 cents worth about ALEC. I come from a line of teachers, and so I'm educated, and I have a big thing about that. I've also been to lobby with some nonprofits on behalf of let's put some more money into the state for public education, pre-K expansion, and so I know that for each dollar we spend, we can save $3 or more, and so it's a good investment. But this ALEC thing, okay, how it came about, I was actually there. Was anyone here at that meeting in Grand Prairie about 3 or 4 months ago? I think it was early March. Maybe 200 people came from all over the state, and all kinds of organizations were represented, and they gave us a book with maybe a 1 page of each of these, and I go, oh wow, all at once I get to find out what's happening and get up to date on these. And it was sort of like a MoveOn.org, I think, was one of the sponsors. You were there? I know Leslie Harris, a lot of people were there. And one of the things that we decided to do towards the end, there were 2 facilitators. I ended up taking one of their place, at the guy's place. He had to leave early. And what we were doing towards the end is getting into little groups and deciding 1, 2, 3. What do each of us, each little group, come up with the number 1, 2, 3 most important things for this campaign, so that we can all 200 people in the room, have some power and work on it for the next 3 months or 3 or 4 months, or now to the campaign in November. Almost every group came up with either it's a voter registration, or I forgot what the other 1 or 2 things were, but the point was, and it was kind of interesting, and when you're a facilitator, you can't just make up the mind for the audience. It really needs to come from the people, and I kind of knew that. So I'm up there and got the little flip thing, and then we're getting, okay, what is your group, and what is your number 1, and your number 2, and your number 3, and I'm telling, and the things that were number 1, 2, and 3, and then some things thrown out after that, like number 4, 5, and 6. Would you believe none of those were what we decided on to work on for the next few months? None of them. Because, for one thing, we started to realize in discussion of that we wanted to be unique. We want something that nobody else is doing, because there are Battleground, Texas isn't doing, voter registration and all that. So someone said this thing about ALEC. I go, oh, ALEC, that's that legislative thing that's coming to town or something. And that's what we ended up deciding to represent. So a lot of what you're hearing about it is sort of this parent group of people, and then they've been meeting once a week, like at the CWA. Anyone here has been part of that? I went to at least one of the meetings. You? Okay. And they've been working hard, and I've been really impressed with the materials coming out of there, and the scheduling, and the events, and everything. And even at the first meeting, smaller meeting, I went to, there were already people represented coming up from Austin to see what this thing was about. And I think we have an opportunity, because there is the nation looking at us, because what Alex is coming to Dallas to do is to try to privatize education. I mean, there are several things on their agenda, but to privatize the public school system. Okay, now look, there's some value to charter schools, and maybe it's for this type of student, or like a student who never graduated high school. At least they have a chance to they don't have to go back to their actual high school and walk the halls with these young people. There's a way for them to kind of finish it up and get on with their life. But for the most part, I believe in public school. I went to a public school. I went to a private school for a while, public school. And that's what most of us have done. And a public school is a neighborhood thing with parental support and participation. And besides, you have teachers who have, let's just put it this way. We know, okay, they're teachers, they have pay, they have retirement, they have benefits, they work long hours, but they have, board of trustees, that comes from the community representing and looking out after it and making sure they're doing the right thing. You have a lot of public input to the public school system, and things in their neighborhoods. And the state money is that's where it's supposed to go. Now, we all know in the 2011 legislative session, they did a lot of cutting the funds, and of course Wendy Davis is known for saving a lot of those funds, and will continue to try to do that. And so the thing is, this ALEC thing that's coming to town, if we don't pay or make enough noise, and they are able to privatize this in Dallas, they are going to have the guts to do it all across the country. So the eyes are, talk about the eyes of Texas are upon you. The eyes of the country are upon the eyes of Texas. And it's just so frightening that, enough money and enough that's behind all this, ALEC, and can pay off enough people and have enough power. And we're just really on the edge of, having, just a few of us showing up at these things, but there could be hundreds of people at this one on Wednesday. If they already were bringing in some bus loads, and that was a couple months ago, so this is big. Let's be part of it. Let's every one of us show up and see what it's about, and be part of us standing there. They've rented out this community brewery. I haven't been there, but I think it's big. I'm not sure. It's one of the places that was a big party during the convention, the Democratic convention. And so why not? I loved going to these things. Nice people, just like we are, right? And so we can be together for a purpose. And Because if not, then we'll have this whole privatization thing, and then it'll be the voucher system, which then next thing you know, it'll be going towards families using it, saying, well, you know, why should my tax money and all that? Is that my time? Is that a timer? Oh, thank you. Okay, so anything else or questions, or be there or be square Wednesday?
This is really more of a question than a rebuttal or comment. It's is this what we get after the home rule stuff doesn't pass? Is ALEC a reaction to that they're now scheduling that? No. Yeah, because they'd written a thing already for it. This is a huge agenda they're pushing forward here. I mean, when I was trying to get a handle on this home rule thing, the title is deceptive. They're talking about putting in an appointed board that really the people have no say in. And I think this meeting, what you're doing, this sounds like something that could be taken. And really, if you get the word out, I think this has traction, should have traction, even over on the other side, the conservative side. They should be interested in this too. And y'all should do more partnering. You really should. You see what you can get together on. I know we could sure use your help on the fluoride issue. We've been trying to get fluoride taken out of the water. That's really a human concern. It's not really party politics there. Anyway, just consideration.
Thank you very much. Come on up. The mic is yours.
I looked on the ALEC website and I just noticed I'm John Sheridan, for those of you who don't know who I am. One thing, I wasn't going to talk about education, but one thing I noticed on the ALEC website is Kaplan, Sally Mae, Scantron are all card-carrying members of ALEC. So that might have something to do with the home rule issue or education in general, or at least ALEC's interest in that. But I think and someone asked about what would you do to change it? And I think there has to be engagement. I think there is a lack of information, or at least there's apathy. And who can blame people? I mean, God, the voting process is bewildering. Just look at this year. We had a primary in March. We had a primary runoff. Then we had school board elections. We walked to vote there, only people there, coming and going. No one was there. Then we have general elections, and off-year general elections here in November. I'd be surprised if we get more than 25% turnout for that. The point I'm making here is there are different tiers of participation. Here we go. There's first of all informing yourself. You've got to use your voice, so you have to have something to say. You've got to make sure you're getting as much information as you can. The next thing is voting in every election, no matter what. That is, I think, a defiant act. If you vote in every single election, especially when you know that only 6% of the eligible voters are going to vote, you're at least using your voice. The next thing is just communicating with your representative, especially on the lower levels, school board. ALEC is involved in those lower levels. They know who your school board school board member is. Most people don't. That's an advantage for ALEC. Next is communicating with your media, letters to editors. That's something is better than nothing. Informing others. Try to be around like-minded people. There are different organizations that are available from both political or from all political persuasions that are out there. Or get together with like-minded people. Organize. If there isn't people that represent your beliefs, make something. Do something. Then activate. That's the time when you want to go protest. Make your voice heard. Those are the things. ALEC, they're a wealthy organization made up of wealthy organizations. They each, individually and collectively, have lawyers that carefully monitor legislation from congressional hearing to floor vote. They know the ins and outs. They know how to put in legislation that they want and is most advantageous to them. We don't. That is an advantage. So we've got to start here. You cannot just say, well, you cannot throw up your hands and say, it doesn't matter, my vote doesn't matter. They're all corrupt. It doesn't work. I mean, you've got to do something. You've at least got to go through the channels here. And if that doesn't work, then you can take the next steps. But you've got to go through the system as it is. And I think a vast minority of people actually avail themselves to that. And that is a great disservice to them and to everyone else.
League Women's Voters did an extensive study on this.
You want to sit, talk into the microphone.
Francis, so we can hear you.
Okay. You want me to shout?
No. Just put your mic on.
Let me have your attention, please.
Yes, teacher.
Go, teacher. League of Women Voters has done an extensive
Point that mic
study.
towards your face, sir.
Okay. And they have some material, and I'll try to get some copies of it and pass out to people. But what they started out talking about was really bad news. We don't want it. They probably will get it ready to vote on maybe by November. I think by the time people see what it is, with any luck at all, they will vote it down. But anyway, I'll try to get this material. I just got some of it today.
Thank you, Francis.
Appreciate that. All right, next up, somebody come and hit the mics.
Hey, my name's Cooper. I really enjoyed Gene's presentation. I've been a community organizer since I was 16. I've worked for environmental organizations as well as labor unions. And right now I work for Dallas Communities Organizing for Change, which provides aid and support to families of victims and survivors of police brutality in Dallas. I like to say that one thing that people have missed, and one thing people often miss when discussing ALEC is SB 1070. ALEC was responsible for writing SB 1070. Does anybody remember what that was? SB 1070 was the law written in Arizona which made Sheriff Joe Arpaio of Maricopa County the Bull Connor of our generation. Some of you may be old enough to remember Bull Connor. Bull Connor was he ran the police and the fire department in Birmingham, Alabama during the Civil Rights Movement. And so SB 1070 gave Sheriff Joe Arpaio the legal authority to pull over anyone who may look like they could be an immigrant, demand their papers, and if not, they were shackled, put into tent cities, forced to wear pink underwear with his signature on it and march through downtown in shackles at lunchtime in Phoenix, Arizona. And so I like to point out that that SB 1070 is illegal, as is many of these draconian immigration policies, because according to the United Nations Resolution on Human Rights, it is unlawful for a nation to prohibit passage, to prohibit the travel of people indigenous to that area. And for the majority, Mexican people, Central Americans, and many South Americans, they are indigenous to the area of Texas, Arizona, Nevada, California, things like this. These laws that are prohibiting the passage and travel of indigenous people are, according to United Nations, are a crime. They're against international law. But ALEC is not an organization that shies away from breaking international law. In fact, one of ALEC's main supporters was a guy by the last name of Yu. You may remember him. He worked in the Bush administration. He's the lawyer for the Bush administration that legalized the torture techniques being used in Guantanamo Bay. You know, see, for a long time, some people in the government thought torture was probably a bad thing, and we probably shouldn't be doing it. But John Yoo came along, and he was able to somehow legalize torture techniques like waterboarding, sensory deprivation, using psychological warfare by identifying the fears of inmates in Guantanamo and other places and using them against them. And so if an inmate had a particular fear or allergy to canines, they would lock them in a room with German shepherds. And these are things that are still practiced today and haven't stopped didn't stop when Bush left office. And so I'd like to, these are some things that get forgotten sometimes, as SB 1070, but I'd like to make a comment. I agree with Gene when he says that 2015 will be a bit of a game changer. I agree. I obviously probably agree with Gene that young people's participation is going to be drastically important, and I agree with Gene 100% when he quotes the Libertarian Party study that young people are not big fans of capitalism. Young people and many people. I'm 23 years old, so I'm probably just a little younger than most of you, but just a little bit, yeah. But I've been tired of capitalism personally since the day I was born. You see, my mother's full-blood Native American. She's Kiowa Inde, or in English it's Apache. And so I was taught from a young age that whatever resources or something a community has, we need to share them and work together and make sure everyone's doing for the best, right? Instead of competing with your neighbor, we need to be cooperating with your neighbor. And then if somebody's doing good, we're all doing good, right? Let's instead of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, let's pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, right? And so these are things we're taught from a young age, and many indigenous people are taught the same thing. And I think that at the root of everything, whether your issue is war or imperialism, whether your issue is economic inequality, whether your issue is our patriarchal society that keeps that makes women subordinate to men in the workplace and out of the workplace, whether your issue is the way that our elders are treated in our community, the root cause of a lot of it is the fact that the power is dominated by the American ruling class or the 1%. And I think the good thing is that more and more people are starting to realize that, and particularly more and more young people are starting to realize that. And it's not going to be just the young people who make the change, because we need you a lot. We need all of you. I don't have a lot of money, so if I get thrown in jail, I need y'all to bail me out. Right? And we need to work together. Labor, the working class labor needs to work together with the progressives, like they're starting to do. And the older generations need to start working together with the younger generations to start, thinking broader and start thinking, maybe ALEC is a bad thing, right? But how can ALEC even exist? So maybe why do we live in a society in which ALEC can even be a thing, right? And so maybe start thinking a little broader and bigger. Like, how about let's build a society in which ALEC could never exist. That's my time. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts. We appreciate that. The nature of our group, we like to hear it from all angles. And there has to be one or two more.
That's John.
Come right on up, John. Oh, there's John coming out of my elbow direction.
Okay, this is kind of a follow-up comment here. In this country and in Europe, in the past, we used to hang horse thieves. And that's where we've come from, to a point where corporations have been given the rights of a personhood, and you can't hang the bastards.
I'm Cienfuegos Carmona, and that was a really good segue to what I want to talk about, and it's about strategy. For a long time, we've tried to use a voting strategy in order to enact these change, and I feel that if we're coming to another recession, that maybe a voting strategy is not where we need to be focusing, and preparedness and maybe a more drastic strategy is, as far as like preparing food for hard times, and organizing your neighbors, knowing who they are in the event that that's going to be necessarily useful. Because any time that we vote leaders in that are there to make an actual change, they end up with a lot shorter lifespan than what they should have. And I think that political assassinations have happened in Central and South American countries when they get leaders in that try to work for the people. And I don't think that that tactic is going to be forgotten in this country just because we're above any sort of borders, which don't mean anything anyways. All right, thank you.
Thanks for you too. Got some fresh sounds tonight, guys. Bring it on, bring it on.
I couldn't help but while we're talking about when he was talking about change, the plan is to try to get voter turnout. And what I found kind of interesting, it kind of brought back an article that I read on Bill Moyer's Facebook page that was talking about that voter turnout has steadily declined since the 1970s to the lowest level, even though we're spending all of this time and energy on voter turnout. In addition, we're ranked like 120th in voter attendance out of 168 countries or something like that. It's pretty sad considering the fact that we're supposedly the model of democracy in the world. We're trying to dictate to all of these other countries how they should be building their democracy, and ours is like pretty pathetic when we're ranked 120th out of all the countries in the world in activity. So sometimes I start having these conversations in my head, kind of like, okay, well, what we've been doing for the past 30 years is not really working. So what can we do to turn it around and get more participation in our democracy? And in what he was saying earlier about, that we do have a limited democracy, but it's only limited by the fact that we are allowing it to be limited by not participating. And when only 6% of eligible voters in Dallas County show up for the primary, that's pretty sad. And it's like that throughout the country. I mean, Texas is one of the lowest voter turnout in the country. And of course, there's all of these things that are coming into making it harder. Like, I heard an article on NPR, they were talking about, like in Australia, it's mandatory to vote. And they were talking about that and whether or not that could be implemented in the United States, and what the reactions were to that, and what the arguments for and against it were. It was actually quite fascinating listening to it. And I started thinking, I was like, well, the problem is part of the reasons why voter turnout has gotten lower and lower is because voters getting more and more and more complex. The districts change every time we turn around. We think we're in one district, next thing we know we're in another. Even the precincts change all the time. Next thing you know, you're like, oh, I've been voting at this school, for years, and now it's at a different school. Now where do I go? Everybody's confused all the time, and everybody's just like, it's really easy when you don't know what you're doing just to throw your hands up in the air and go, okay, I'm done. I can't deal with this anymore, because you're too busy worrying about putting food on the table, taking care of your kids, getting them where you need to go. What George was saying, I was busy. I was raising a family. I was taking care of a family. And unfortunately, that's what's happening to most of our most of our people, is they're too busy worrying about basic necessities that when it really boils down to fighting for the right to vote, they just don't do it. And that's what's interesting about it, is that we have to fight for our right to vote. I mean, I keep reminding myself when my great aunt died in her 90s, when she was born, she didn't have the right to vote, you know? And we have women here in this country now in their 90s that were, when they were born, didn't have the right to vote. It wasn't that long ago that half the population didn't have the right to vote. And it didn't even include any minorities and all the other problems that we had. So it's something that we have to fight for. And for the question is, to me, and what I think we really need to start boiling down to it, is what kind of strategy, how can we change our strategy? Because with the declines in the last 30 years, the complexity, the difficulties that have been added to it, the voter ID, all of these other things that have made it more and more complex, adding all kinds of all of the different things on the ballot, whatever else, the ballots have gotten more confusing. They've added more positions that are voted positions that weren't before to make it even more complex. You know, like district clerk, for example, things like that. And like, even those of us that are here that are paying attention and are going to DACD and Garland Democrats and whatever group you're involved in, and we're meeting people running for office and we're actually paying attention. Even we have to spend a lot of time researching who we're gonna vote for. It's very complex. So what can we do to make it better? That's the question. Because it needs to be going up, not down, the voter turnout. Thank you.
We need the answer.
Smarter than me, so give me the answer.
All right, next up.
Help me with this.
Does he help you with what?
Okay, let's report from where we were today all day. Okay, from our Battleground, Texas summit.
Okay, so I like that idea, and what I'm going to say is, let me start my timer so I don't talk over.
Okay.
It's amazing to me, and I agree, it is complex. I agree, we do get distracted. I agree that exercising our rights, most of us, I think, here would say, yes, that is extremely important to exercise the rights that we have, or we will lose them. But it's just amazing to me how easy it is for people to look up all kinds of obscure information on their little cell phones and then use the excuse that they don't know how to vote, or they don't know how to find where to go vote, or they don't know how to find out about the candidates. I call BS, okay? I call for everybody to wake up and quit your whining. If you can figure out how to find a movie on Netflix and all of that stuff, you can figure out how to get to a movie theater on time, you can figure out how to get to the polling location on time. BS, all right? Now, time and again, when I'm out at a voter registration drive, I will say that we're talking to the general public, and people will say, oh, no, I really don't get involved in politics. If I'm there to register you to vote, or Jan, or Shelley, or George, whoever, if we're out there to register you to vote, we're not asking you to vote a certain way. We're asking for you to claim your voice and participate, okay? Your vote is your voice, and how you cast your vote matters. It matters. So, that said, we've talked many times here about the different party platforms and what they've come up with. Do you oppose or do you encourage critical thinking skills? What's your statement about the environment, and how do you care about the air that you breathe, the water that you drink? Do you want to be drinking your own toilet water recycled? Seriously. Okay, now, if these things are not enough to compel you to think about, what can I do to make a difference? Can I show up? Can I be with the force that is going to be out there Wednesday talking and protesting this gathering of ALEC? Okay, if I have to work, I darn sure want to sponsor somebody else to be there in my spot. okay? $20 to the person who needs a train fare or whatever to get down there. I will help with that if I have to work and can't be there. Now, what else can I do? And this is where Jan comes back in, because this morning we attended a summit that is helping us learn how to talk to people about voting. What do you really care about? Do you care about pay equity? Do you care that women still get paid 74 cents on the dollar to men, even though they have equal qualifications or maybe even more experience? Do you care about that? Because if you do, you shouldn't be voting for people like Greg Abbott or Glenn Hager or any of these other people that forgive me, but I don't know what the Republicans were thinking when they chose the individuals who are on their ballot in the primary. What were they thinking? That they would actually have somebody on their ballot as Attorney General who's openly admitted to securities fraud.
Oh, all kinds of things.
Okay? Seriously, we have to be able to pay attention. We have to. Wouldn't you rather have somebody who is an accountant be in charge of the state budget of Texas? An accountant, an actual accountant who understands cash in, cash out, where money goes, how money gets distributed, who has advised countless businesses as a big firm accounting person, and then going on to be the chief financial officer who had to sign off on financials at a large oil and gas company as a business person. Wouldn't you rather have that individual as your controller handling a multi-billion-dollar budget? Or do you want to choose the Republican side where they have a rice farmer? Okay, I've got to say, this election matters so much. It is urgent, urgent, urgent that we all get involved. I don't know how to express it enough, but if you would like to join us, I think you should think about, not just think about it, make a commitment. What can I do? What can I do? Can I register people to vote? Can I show up? Can I talk to people my age? Can I talk to people wherever? Okay, Jan, you get to talk now.
Then I'll talk. Okay, so Battleground, Texas. I'm real excited about that because, they came in over a year ago, first to the smaller counties that were underserved on political involvement, and now they've hit the big cities. And I've got some good positive takeaway, but they've been very successful, and they're way ahead of schedule on the number of people participating, and we are on track. Part of the key is for this election is, of course, we know it's women, and we know it's, minorities and Hispanics, getting them out to vote. But what was it that they said? Oh, yeah, several things. Okay, if we can get people thinking and to vote, if the people who voted election year, because remember this is an off election year, then we would have, Yeah, presidential. This is off president. But if people who voted the presidential year would vote this year as if it was a presidential year, then we would win. This is Democrats. And there might be some Republicans in here. From what I understand, a lot of Republicans split their vote. A lot more than Democrats. So anyway, that's cool. There's some good things about the campaign, but it is everybody working. Now, contact Battleground, Texas, and you have opportunities to come, and there are nice things in people's houses or in a restaurant, so it's sociable. And bring your phone and you call some people and see if they want to come to the next event, and it kind of works that way. Maybe you want to block walk 2 at a time, and they do train you on how to approach people and ask them, what are you interested in, or what's your hot button, and how to address that, and how you talk about that. And if you go to let's say the Wendy Davis for governor, whatever, the website, those talking points are on there. So then, you keep it simple with what their issue is and then nail it that way, or issues. What else? What else? Oops. So there's block walks, there's the phone banks, and then registering people to vote, and there are places to get that training. Sometimes there's an event and you just go an hour early, get that training, a couple pages, half an hour, 45 minutes, your do's and don'ts, and then you can register people, and you're at an event anyway. So that's good. But it's going to take all of us, you know, across the state. There are 1,200 people. We had, what did we have, 200 there today? They said 12, didn't they say 1,200 of us?
There were 1,200 today at different events all across the state, just those specific.
Oh, okay. We're right. Right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's and of the four things that we do, because data input's one of them. One of the most effective by, you know, they know these statistics now, is the going door to door. So if you can do a little bit of that training, and it's kind of fun, good way to meet your neighbors, because just think about it. You know, if you open your door and it's a neighbor who says, I live on the next street over, you're going to listen to them. So if you're going to your neighbors, great way to meet them. You know, so one of my block had a ladies' luncheon for the 8 people on our, whatever, 10 on our block. And first time I met these people. So it's just, it's a great way to know and do and kind of what's happening in the neighborhood. And sometimes from your homeowners association, there are books where you could call the people. You could also get them all on Next Door Neighbor. That's an online thing where you can post if a dog's lost, or who has a workman who can come fix my roof or whatever, and you know, you can but you can use that list. But Battleground Texas provides you with all of that, so I just really recommend Battleground Texas. All right.
All right, more good information just keeps pouring out. One more.
One more bit of information. If you haven't watched the movie ALEC Exposed, you can pull it up on the internet and watch it. I would suggest you do that.
Francis, you gotta teach me how to do that. You gotta teach me how to do that.
All right, we're making good time tonight, guys, and Dr. Lantz always gives a shorter, succinct presentation, which he did tonight, and gives us time to talk about it a lot and ask a lot of questions and give a lot of comments. That's what makes our group go around. One quick question: has anybody made it in tonight after I came around and passed the collection plate? Charles, I know you didn't have change, but if anybody else hasn't paid the $3 tonight, we'll try to catch me. We use it to fund buying the speaker's dinner, and Tom uses it to print all the notices and do all the stuff that he does to organize and keep it all going, which we appreciate. Makes a pretty modest cost. We're also very appreciative of the Barbecs for giving us access to the room here and not trying to charge us a fat fee that it would cause our $3 tuition to soar to a much larger number. So we're very blessed in that regard. I would also mention that our server takes good care of us, along with the support she gets from her folks. So whether you just got a drink or whether you order the biggest thing on the menu, please be generous with your server when you leave a tip tonight. That's what makes our world go around, and if we don't take good care of the server, then we can't expect them to continue to respect us and honor us and grant us the use of the facility. We appreciate that very much. Anybody else before we have Mr. Lantz come up and give us some closing comments? He may have some comments about some of the comments we made.
Comment about the comment?
Yeah, it gets sort of circuitous sometimes, if that's the nearly correct pronunciation of that word. Well, I think we've done it all. I would make one brief comment, and that's this: I read a lot, and you know, I grew up in Texas when Texas, basically our elections in Texas were the Democratic primaries. because the Republican Party never really made much of a showing. And so if you did not get interested enough in what was going on in terms of candidates and go vote in the primary, you basically had no say. You know, if it was a typical November election, now sometimes our city, county, school board elections will occur at different times of the year. But if you just take the votes for state legislators and for the people that we're going to send up to DC either to be senators or House of Representatives, the primary was basically the election. You could stay home in November and probably not have much impact. But the unfortunate thing was that people got in the habit of not going to the primaries. And that was really important to do. And fortunately, I was taught that at a early age. My parents were not real active in politics, so I didn't grow up, out walking the streets and handing out brochures, at age 12, because that just wasn't done in our household. But I got interested in it because of the teachers I had in school. And now it's evolved. We basically elected nobody to the National Congress until probably John Tower was elected to the U.S. Senate. And then it began to grow from that. So now the election really is an election. But the primary hasn't, in my opinion, really diminished in its importance. Just think about how many of those primaries brought out not just 2 candidates, but 3, 4, 5, 6 candidates. So when that happens, unless one is really super known, it's very difficult for them to get a majority vote. And so that we almost always end up with a runoff. And what were we saying earlier? 6% of voters typically come and vote in a primary. And then I think most politicians think they're fortunate if they get half those to come back and vote in the runoff. So a pretty darn small handful of people actually control the votes. I've not been very successful in putting together a package where I'd go out and knock on every neighbor's door and persuade them to vote. I live in a neighborhood where that percentage is higher than normal. We have a lot of young professionals in the neighborhood who've moved in. There's the second owners of the houses now, and they are pretty involved. I see that when I go up to the neighborhood schools to vote. But one of the things I have experienced that I've enjoyed doing is I have some friends who consciously don't want to know anything about politics. They don't want to take the time to listen or to research. Even though they're very computer literate, they don't do that. And so but from time to time I get asked the question, Jim, would you print out a sample ballot from this election and mark it how you're going to vote it? I know I can do what I want to do, but I at least know that you've done some reading and you've done some studying and you've gone to some of the meetings and you've listened to the candidates. And, your choice might not be exactly what I would make if I did everything you did, but I at least think you know something more about it than what I do. So tell me who you're going to vote for, and if it doesn't sound bad to me, I'm going to go to the ballot box and do that. And so I guess what I would suggest to you, if you have friends who come back with that, I don't want to participate in that, it takes too much time and study and effort, you might suggest that you at least give them a list of what you've learned and what you suggest. It's really no different than what some of the organizations here in Dallas do. We get lists of people they support, and sometimes they'll tell us why. So there are some things that we can do. We can just be a little bit innovative. If we bring a few people out to vote, then it does become a more representative thing, which is what we're supposed to be trying to operate under. So that's all the words that I have to add to that tonight. But I appreciate everybody's come. If you're here for the first time, I hope you heard some things and saw some participation in the format that might whet your appetite to come back. We'd certainly welcome seeing you again. And with that, I'd like our speaker to come up and give us some closing comments. We'll shut it down. Generally, some of us want to go down the street to Casa Linda to Starbucks and have a cup of coffee and maybe eat a little piece of pastry or something, which I'll help you do. So if you want to do that, come down and join us. Dr. Lantz.
Thanks to everybody who shed some information, helped us find out some more aspects of this. I was talking about intimidation, and I remembered while people were speaking that I have to find every email I've ever written about Walmart by Tuesday, because Walmart's suing me. I'm one of 2 people in the United States being sued by Walmart for non-criminal trespass, and that's intimidation. You know, because you're facing contempt of court charges if you don't do what they say, and they have the money to do that to anybody. They can do it to me. They can do it to you. They can do it to George. I know.
It's just like this, Jim.
George made an important contribution when he talked about the importance of the Occupy movement, because a lot of us did find out that there are others who are running the country that are not us. Because most of the time in America, we like to say, we did this, we invaded Vietnam, you know, we started fracking the wells, we did this and we did that because we're all Americans, we're all the same. Wasn't us. But we is the most dangerous word in the English language. Because we didn't invade Vietnam. Did anybody here get asked about, well, invading Iraq? That's more recent. Did you get asked? Did you cast your vote on invading Iraq? No, you didn't. How about the TARP? How about the bailout? Did you get a vote on that? No. ALEC is kind of the point of discussion at this moment. But ALEC by itself is actually diminishing. It's on the downside of its importance. I'm not saying it's not very, very important, but it's on the downside. There are other organizations that have been around much longer, the National Association of Manufacturers, an anti-union organization. It's been around since the 40s, I know, if not before that. How about the National Right to Work Committee? It's ongoing since the late 40s. How about the Chamber of Commerce, National Chamber of Commerce, and all of their little Chamber of Commerces? How about Walmart itself, which is an institution by itself? How about the Koch brothers? Major financiers of Walmart too, by the way. What is important in it, and here's the reason I started off talking the way I did. Instead of just going into the mechanics of ALEC. What did I do, blow it up? No. Okay. We are talking about democracy in America. We're talking about democracy being pushed back in the immediate sense by these court cases that George mentioned. Citizens United, and that's not the only one. There have been 3 very important ones. One two of them that freed up corporate money to buy elections, and the one that took away the heart of the Voting Rights Act. We've seen democracy pushed backwards in those 3 major Supreme Court decisions. We've also seen democracy pushed back by redistricting, and we've seen democracy pushed back. And I'm talking about recently. I'm not talking about something only old people remember. We've seen democracy pushed back by the voter suppression that ALEC is sponsoring all over the country. So we're not just talking about one organization. We're talking about how the 1% dominates us. Why they do it is obvious. They intend to rob us. They intend to steal from us. And in order to steal from us, they need to castrate us. Or spay us, as the case may be. They need to remove our ability to fight. You know, they need to remove our democracy. But I also heard in the discussion some references to a longer perspective of democracy. Don't forget that this country was created by white male property owners. Some of that property being other people. White male property owners were the only ones who had any democracy when this country was started. And someone mentioned the fact that women won the right to vote. Thank you very much for mentioning that. Someone mentioned the white primaries in Texas that were white up to 1946 by law. And how important the primaries were back when the Dixiecrats ran this state. And most of the South, if not all of the South, with their white primaries. Someone mentioned earlier in the evening, well, we were just talking at the table about Freedom Summer and how black people won the right to vote and the right to participate in politics through tremendous suffering and very brave actions. If you look at the long picture in America, you see that we've been winning. Up until recently, democracy was on the rise. I remember Governor Alan Shivers, who started Democrats for Eisenhower and started the change to Republicans here in Texas. Governor Alan Shivers, who called out the National Guard and the Texas Rangers to stop black children from going to school in Mansfield in 1956, a year before Little Rock. I remember when there were no Spanish language ballots and no Chinese language ballots, and all the ballots were printed in English. So we've made progress over the years, in many ways. I remember when the voting age got lowered. I remembered, as it came up in this discussion, when the draft was dropped. I had quite a bit to do with that, in fact. So, the long curve of human existence has been toward democracy. We don't have any slaves to speak of in this country. We don't have any peons or serfs to speak of in this country. We still have that, but it's not nearly as bad as it was. The long curve of human existence has been toward more democracy. When someone deliberately and in a concentrated way takes a stand against democracy and tries to reverse the accomplishments of humankind, we call that fascism. Fascism can be successful. It was successful in Italy and in Germany. It's made a lot of inroads in America today. We're going in that direction when voter suppression comes along and when redistricting does what it's doing, and when corporations are ruled to be people and that money is ruled to be votes. So we are looking at a long-term improvement of democracy, strengthening of the rights of the common person. But we're looking at a short-term effort to remove our democracy. And as I said, it's not just ALEC. There are plenty of other organizations that do similar things for the 1%, by and for the 1%, to take away the rights of the 99% or us. The opportunity that we have on Wednesday is to show that to people. And to not only show them that this is one case where we can fight and win, but that the whole struggle for democracy and the whole picture of the 99% and the 1% is something that they can understand and something that they can do something about. Now, I talked about fear. I said that people in America, in my opinion, are afraid. The main way that I know of to get somebody to go out and do something is to bring them personally. When they know that someone they know, is going to go, then they might go. They might go to their first activity. They don't go when they read about it in the newspaper or get an email. But if somebody they know is going, somebody they know, even if they see on television, somebody I know walked across the television screen with a protest sign, then they are strengthened and they're a little bit less afraid. And that's the kind of contribution that each and every one of us can make on Wednesday. So the question is not so much one of understanding ALEC or even understanding the struggle for democracy. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And I maintain that each and every one of us can do something just by showing up. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure. What a diverse group. I mean, our speakers are just from A to Z, and it always stimulates our mind. And the thing I've told people that I tell about the group is the thing I've enjoyed about this group, one of the things, many there are, but even on those rare occasions when we've had a speaker who hasn't been very articulate or very attractive to listen to, which certainly isn't the case tonight at all. Well, Tom has a very open mind. You know, he tells me, I will invite anybody to come and speak, give them an opportunity to do it, regardless of what I think about what their viewpoint is. So we get a lot of interesting experiments, but this group has an interesting way of asking questions that still can turn a not so hot presentation into pretty interesting. And then when you guys get up and give your comments, you really put frosting on the cake. Maybe light a couple of candles. So that's great. Thanks for doing it like you do it. We really appreciate it. So let's adjourn. We have a few minutes to get out of here. It's not quite closing time yet, so I'm not going to urge you to run out the door the moment we stop. Yeah, don't run. But we'll get the sound system apart, and some of us will retire at the Starbucks down the street. Anybody not know where that is? Just down Garland Road. When you approach the second traffic signal, it's on your right. Come back next week if you can. Have a good night.
This is William, your videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like us, or follow us, and get notices of all our videos. We love it even when you call. So when visiting the Barbeck's restaurant, tell them you want your reservation to the next College of Complex class.